Welcome back to Mental Notes with Matt, the podcast where we talk about mental health, growth, resilience, and what it means to live an honest life. Today's guest is someone I've known for a very long time. Jamie Hannigan and I go all the way back to high school, and even back then I remember her as someone unafraid to live her truth, no matter what other people thought. She's walked a path that hasn't always been easy, but it's been hers, and that's something I've always respected and admired. Jamie reached out recently after following some of the work I've been doing around mental health, and the moment we reconnected, it felt like we were meant to have this conversation. So this episode is a chance to reflect not just on healing and resilience, but on what it really means to be devoted to your truth, even when the world doesn't get it. Jamie, I think you and I both know what that feels like, to have people around us that don't seem to get us, you know? But first of all, welcome, and thank you for being willing to have the conversation with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. You've always had a fierce, I think that's the correct word to use here.
Love that
fierce
word.
Devotion to your truth, sprinkled with glitter, even even when it might have looked unconventional or been misunderstood. Where do you think that came from?
This actually came up recently in a conversation with my mom, where someone who was pretty close to me over a number of years just started, questioning my morals, my values, my beliefs, all this stuff. And my mom looked at me right in the eyes and said, Jamie, you have been fundamentally the same person since you were born.
Yeah.
So anyone that knows you and truly knows you and then begins to question anything is just like so off base.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that felt really good to hear. And anytime somebody says that about me, it feels good to hear, because I think that when something really is part of your truth and deeply ingrained in you and just something you don't think about as you're going about daily life, it's kind of still almost a surprise when someone says something like you just said, or like my mom just said, and they come in moments where I really need to hear it. So I'm grateful for that. And I think for me, there have been a lot of people, a lot of situations along my journey thus far that have contributed to that for me. But yeah, it's something that I hold tightly to, fiercely to, and yes, with glitter always.
Got to include the glitter.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like a lot of people are shaken by the people around them. I mean, we can't isolate our entire lives. We're around people that are obviously not going to think like us or behave like us. I've definitely fallen victim to the desire to fit in over being my true self 100% of the time. It's like, what is it that keeps you from being shaken by that? I mean, you kind of said, you're not really thinking about it. It's not top of mind. You're kind of staying focused on the things you're trying to accomplish. But is there anything more, like specifically that helps you to not be shaken by other people's negativity or cutting you down?
I'm not threatened by people who are different. And I think a lot of people are. And I think that comes hand in hand, right? So if you're not threatened in any way, human nature is to want to fit in, to be accepted, to be loved, to have a group, to have a tribe, right? And I have that for sure. I want that. And I'm lucky enough to have it. But I think those that put forth a front that is defensive or, puts other people down, it really just means that they're a little bit insecure with their truth in some way that they may not even recognize.
Yeah.
But for me, I welcome, I always want kind of that outcast crowd, that crowd of friends and family where everyone is different, where everyone does have like a lot of things happening in their brain, a lot of things happening outside their brain. I kind of thrive on having people around me that are different.
Yeah.
So that's why it's been easy, because I'm not threatened by differences.
Totally. I mean, life is a lot more exciting when you surround yourself with people that come from different experiences, for sure. I mean, it's the artist's life, I think, is to observe and recognize the differences in people and embrace it rather than find it to be something to fear. you know,
Yeah. Or
um,
not even notice it half the time. Like people
or
are like,
not
"Oh,
even notice it
you
half the
know,
time.
so and so is this, and the other thing. Like, how do you handle that?" And I'm like, "They are." Like, it doesn't
Hmm.
even. I don't know. I don't even notice what other people consider to be massive differences in someone else.
Well, that's great. It's a great attribute. You're lucky you have that. I mean, I think more people need to embrace that. But looking back, are there specific moments or chapters in your life that really tested that belief or that ability, or made you even question it?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, and this is another thing that people say about me that again I didn't really realize, but I'm proud to know now, is that once I love you forever.
Mm.
And I keep calling the same people. Part of it's probably my anxiety. But part of it is that, I deeply do believe in people who have been brought into my life by the universe, that I needed, that I asked for, that I wanted. And, once they're there, I want them to stay. But there have been those rare occasions where, someone will, it's a sideswipe where you're like, whoa, this was a person who I had 100% love and devotion to, and then all of a sudden it crumbles. And so I think those for me are the tests where I'm just like, I so deeply wanted this person to be a forever in any sort of relationship, romantic or otherwise, where you're just like, you don't expect that blow that comes out of nowhere. And I think for me, the disappointment and the heartache, I wear my heart on my sleeve. So
Mm.
coming back from realizing, and that's just part of life, right? It happens.
Yes.
But for me, that has been a true challenge to be able to
Yeah.
come back from someone in my life who I thought was a forever and was a temporary.
Yeah. Those are good lessons to acknowledge. You can't change people. I know in my life, I've definitely met people and had an idea of who I thought they were and what their values were, and really embraced them. There's this desire, I think, immediately to say, how can I figure out a way for us to be more in alignment? But you really just kind of have to let people be exactly who they are and be okay with the fact that maybe they'll walk away or the relationship won't continue. And again, I think it's holding on to what your truth is and being proud of that. I still continue to struggle with that. And, I think that I'm better now as I've gotten older, and especially the last year or so, pushing back on that narrative that I'm not enough just as I am, that I've got to elevate myself in different environments in order to feel included. When did you feel most misunderstood?
I think I kind of operate in a constant state of feeling misunderstood. And just
Yeah.
um in various situations, and I think I have the deep desire to always over explain myself because
Mm.
I think in my brain, which has been another tough thing for me to learn, but over explaining myself and, you know, giving my 100% in every situation and every explanation in every person and every relationship doesn't always translate to everything working out fine.
Yeah.
And like, and that's okay. But like, you know, I always feel a little bit misunderstood. And I don't know if that's just me and work I have to do on me, but I've really, over the last year, taken a big conscious step in the right direction toward maybe giving a little less at first.
Mm.
And not in a deliberate way where it's like, I'm giving you less, but less, verbally, less explanation, because I've learned that the people that really understand me almost immediately. So
Yeah.
it's like, if I have to give that constant explanation to someone, or that constant, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, if after a while you kind of have to say, you know what? This person may not fully understand me, and that's okay. Maybe they understand me enough because I know them in a work environment. So if they understand me enough for the work environment, great, check. If they understand me enough for, you know, I work a lot on the PTO, which has been so fun and interesting. It's like, if they understand me enough for that situation, great. Not everybody needs to be my friend. Not everybody needs to understand me on a deep level. But I think being an artist and just being the person who I am, I have that desire to be understood
Yes,
on a deep level. And I have that
for
desire to,
sure.
in turn, understand on a deep level.
Yeah, yeah. There's always this constant desire for connection, and not just
Mm.
surface level connection, but deep level connection. You want to fully understand the person. And I don't think that is a two-way street for most people. And I feel like, I don't know about you, but there's almost like this initial feeling like I need to prove myself in new situations, and not necessarily through listing off your accolades or all the things that you've done in life, but by showing yourself as a slightly elevated version of your baseline, your default setting,
Right, and I think
and
that's
it's,
part of how we were raised too. It's like
yeah,
put your best foot forward, which is nice, and I believe people should, and I try to raise my son the same way. But like, if someone doesn't want your best foot, just give them the not so good foot. It's all
for
right.
sure. For sure. Yeah, I mean, for people pleasers and people that want to affect change, I think it can be difficult to accept that. you know,
Well,
there
and that's,
there's
I
there's a
mean,
bigger push.
that absolutely, and that's the nature of the industry that we're in, right?
Mm,
Because if you walk in a room and you're not liked, you don't get the job.
yeah,
Not liked on a surface level, but liked for whatever the job is, you don't get the job. And,
you
because
don't
we
fit.
are
Yeah,
just
you have to fit into the mold, and if you don't, then
absolutely.
that's and that definitely pushes people like us, I think, to create masks that are sometimes a little bit difficult to let go of. Especially if you're wearing them for such a long period of time, that becomes something that is difficult to distinguish between who you really are underneath all of that. I think that I've gotten trapped as an adult trying to determine which of the threads are my authentic self and maybe, the ones that I was using in order to, help me get the job or to feel more included in situations. It's interesting too. I've had a couple of conversations recently with people where I've been a little bit more vulnerable and told them, I've struggled with confidence. They're like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, I know. I get the
Most
same thing.
people
I'm
that
like,
know me, yes, most people that know me look at me and they're like, "That's a really confident guy." Like and it's just so interesting to me because so often I would come back home and it would be a quiet apartment and I'd be like, "All right, whew," you know, all that work of keeping that kind of level. It's hard to describe,
it's exhausting.
It
That's a
is
good word for
exhausting.
it.
It's very exhausting. And again, like I think that it's my own fault really for being misunderstood by people because they're only judging by what I'm giving them,
Hmm.
And I think it's a constant journey for me anyway to get really comfortable staying true to what my actual values are and how I feel in different situations rather than just trying to keep the peace, you know?
Yeah, I think that has a lot. I mean, you have a therapist, I'm sure, like I do. So,
Yeah.
that's part of our that's part of how we were raised and and
Yeah.
whatever too. So we know where that all comes from.
For
Uh,
sure. Yeah. I mean, what's your definition of strength or resilience? And like, has that changed over the years?
it definitely has, and most recently has, I would say within the last 2 years. Again, I have all these kind of significant moments in my life that I could say contributed to where I am currently, on that thought. And so, over the last 2 years, I ended up listening to an audiobook just totally by chance, not even on purpose. I was on my way to a show that I was performing in Salem, so it was quite a drive, like 5 hours and change or whatever. Someone was supposed to had been driving with me, and I realized I was gonna take the drive alone, so I asked, someone for an audiobook recommendation, and they gave it to me, and it was someone who I grew up thinking, like every kid has their own superheroes in their mind, right? Whether it be a fictitious character, whether it be a celebrity, whether it be a family member, what have you. So one of the people that I grew up thinking was absolutely a superhero and untouchable, um, went through a lot and came out the other side of it and is thriving right now. So for me, there were always, I have lived my truth 100%, but there was, something about something that occurred in my life many years ago, and I was always afraid to talk about it or come forward about it because I didn't want to be seen as weak. I didn't want to be
Mm,
seen as someone that allowed something. I, at my core, never wanted to be seen as not strong, right? And after listening to this book and realizing that this person that I was thought, was and still think now in a in a whole different way is one of the strongest people I've ever come across, you know, they're not viewed as by me or anyone else as not being strong. That's real strength.
yeah.
Real strength is not never having gone through something.
Yeah.
Real strength is going through it and coming out of the other side.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. Speaking of struggles, especially ones that are invisible to everyone else. I was recently diagnosed officially with ADHD, and I think that I've had my suspicions my entire life, but it's never been diagnosed. And I think not knowing 100% has made things really confusing over the years. I love the fact that I
And you're
struggle
like,
with this.
"That's why."
Yeah, and I think that there's a misconception also on what ADHD is
For
and how
sure.
it affects people. I mean, obviously I was a very hyperactive kid and I used that hyperactivity, I channeled that into being a performer, and that's what always felt really good. But, along with that comes this intense amount of brain fog and having a difficult time, remembering certain threads, and it comes with a whole lot of self doubt.
For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
I am not officially diagnosed yet, but I've been exploring getting that diagnosis, especially because I think that I may also want to get one for my child.
sure,
And I thought, he's not going alone because I know that that's part of me as well. But just in being an adult now and reading about it, right? Because when we were younger, I think there was a certain stigma surrounding it for sure that has, from what I can gather, gotten a bit better now because it is talked about more,
right,
but it's also something I didn't know because I can hear my mother's voice and my teacher's voices saying she doesn't have ADHD, she's missing the H. And I'm like, no, I'm
yeah,
super hyper in here, please realize. So like it doesn't present the same
for sure.
in everyone. So I wasn't the kid running around the classroom, I was the kid petrified of getting in trouble, but I had the same struggles as someone who was running around the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said there. The hyperactivity portion of it, it might not even present outwardly, but the amount of stuff that's going on internally
Whew,
constantly
whew.
is exhausting. Um, and for me, it's been the type of thing where I'm in situations and I am trying so hard in the moment, at every moment, to understand all of the nuance of what's going on around me, and what is this person thinking and what is this person thinking, and am I doing something that's affecting them negatively, and how can I adjust myself right now in order to make everything copacetic, and I don't want to be found out, and fraud complex, like all that
Oh
stuff
yeah.
is a part of it as well. Yeah, and it's exhausting. It's
And I
tough
think
to
it's a
it's tough
really
to
great lesson
yeah,
to learn that how anything, whether it be a diagnosis of any kind, mental, physical, whatever, or just any situation in general, the way that it's thought of by society and the general public is almost never, what it is on paper and what it really is. So, like, my definition of ADHD that I thought was one thing because that's the way it was taught to me is something completely different.
it is. I had this conversation with a friend recently about the logical aspects of things versus the feelings behind everything. I feel like there really does need to be a combination of those things. You can't just be fully clinical when you're talking about something that someone's affected by. You've got to understand the feelings associated with that, with each individual person, and how it affects them. Not everyone can be grouped together in a box.
Never in any situation. I think becoming a parent and having that desire for your child to have the best life possible and to struggle the least amount possible. It's like, I know that he's the reason why I was able to really do the research about myself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, maybe I would have come to it if I wasn't a parent. I don't know, but I know I can sit here and say confidently, because of him and because of the struggles I see him having and because of the beautiful attributes that he has.
Mm.
I've learned to appreciate parts of myself that were maybe kind of knocked down by the adults in
Yeah.
my life when I was his age. And I see him, and just, you're going through this everyday parental, it's a joy, and it's also just the most ridiculous learning experience you'll ever have in your life. Um
Yeah.
but he's really taught me so much and really enabled me to be able to confidently do that research about myself too.
Yeah. I think there's also this idea of, people seeing you in a certain way, or pointing something out about you, or not believing because of what they're observing in you that you are affected by some of these really hard things. And that can be really confusing and also exhausting, as I think the theme of all of this, to feel like you need to, over explain, which is something that I feel like you've done and that I do, when it doesn't need to be. It can just be what it is. But I think that I've kind of adapted to the feedback I've gotten from all different kinds of people that see me the way that they see me, and that's been a blessing and a curse. Like I consider myself super adaptable, and that's really helpful in a lot of situations in life. But when it comes to being comfortable in your own skin, that can be really difficult to reconcile because you're not quite sure which version is the most accurate, based on
Yeah,
the
that
feedback you've gotten from people in your life and what you're trying to show the world so that you fit in, you know?
yeah, that came up recently too for me, where I remember, the school nurse or like my parents or whomever, my dance teacher growing up, where, I could be, like, I did my first ever dance competition at like 8 or 9 years old, however old I was, with the flu.
Mm.
Like, vomited backstage twice, ran out there, almost passed out, did the dance, came back, vomited again. And it's like, that was my choice. No one forced me, right? I wasn't in that kind of place where it wasn't Dance Moms. It wasn't, not, but it wasn't to that extreme. But you know, because my conscious choice my entire life has been to push through and to work hard and to be present for the things that I want to be present for, I was doubted and my feelings were diminished. And I was always told by school nurses or parents, well, you must not be that sick because you want to go to dance class, or you must not be that sick because you can get up and go when the ice cream man comes outside. And I'm like, well, maybe. And I've learned this about myself too, that cold and ice and all of that helps with anxiety and ADHD and all these feelings that I'm having. So now as an adult, I keep ice pops on hand all the time for when I don't feel well. And I'm like, I just remember being young and feeling terrible or being sick and being like, please, please, I want the ice cream man. And, a natural parent's reaction would
Sure.
be to be like, come on, like you're sick. Oh, you must not be that sick if you want ice cream. And so I think that's been something I dealt with my whole life, where it's like, because my type of personality is, I don't care what's happening right now. I'm going to perform anyway. I'm going to get through life anyway. I'm going to do what I have to do anyway, which again is a blessing and a curse, because there's there's been
Yeah.
times recently where I'm like, "Oh, my body has told me no, thank you.
Sure.
I cannot push through this." But I think, that self-doubt and that over-explaining definitely comes from that.
Yeah. And it's not only the physical in those types of situations. It's also, depression or anxiety or other things that are unseen by other people that can make it difficult for people to understand fully or accept that you're struggling. I think a lot of people have people in their lives when they're struggling mentally in any way, shape, or form, like accepting that that's that person's reality and that they are struggling. I think people want to say, like, I'm looking at you right now, like you're fine, or trying to explain things away.
And it may be
Um,
that they want to help, or
right,
that they,
right.
it's not always negative. I think that's what you're saying, right? Is
Yeah,
that they're just like, you're okay. You're
yeah.
okay. And it's like, no, I'm not.
Or they're scared to face it and don't want to have the conversation, or it's too deep or whatever.
Yeah, when I sit and think about the type of people and personalities and hearts and souls that I'm attracted to the most, it's those who are 100% truthful and don't front, and that has helped me, and whether that's really what they're doing or not is a whole other level, right?
Right.
But I am attracted to authenticity. I am
Same.
attracted to truth. I feel most comfortable around people that other people feel uncomfortable around.
Yeah.
So if someone's loud and proud and just like, you're getting what's real in their brain comes straight out their mouth, that's my favorite kind of person.
Yeah.
You don't have to wonder.
Well, because I
And
think I
so
think that it kind of gives you permission to be vulnerable also, and to
absolutely.
speak about the things that you maybe don't feel comfortable talking to about with people that just wouldn't get it. I mean, it's hard to articulate that, but I think I mean I 100% agree. There are definitely people, artists especially, that you have conversations with, these deep conversations with, and it's like you leave those conversations and you take a deep breath and you're like, ah, thank you. Like that's therapy. That's therapy,
Hmm.
really, you know? Feeling like you can be unfiltered and won't be judged for it. Or if somebody feels differently, at least be accepted for that being your point of view without it being torn down or someone trying to change your mind in some way.
Yeah, and I think being, not that I'm a fan of this word, but again, it is hard to articulate, but someone being unconventional and unafraid and, especially again, I say in the industry that we're in, somebody who's not afraid to say the thing that everyone else is afraid to say,
Hmm.
like those are the real heroes.
Yeah.
Like the people that are out there not caring about, well, I'm sure they do care about themselves and the money they're making and the job that they need, right, to support themselves just like we all do, but it's like those people that are not afraid to put their foot down, stand up for what they believe in, and do or say the thing that other people are otherwise afraid of doing. Like, those are my people.
Yeah. I think a lot of people really do appreciate when they're around someone that does speak up like that, because I think that a lot of the time people don't feel strong enough to say the things that are true for them, you
Well, and
know?
then we get labeled as somebody who's, I could think of a couple muggle jobs that I've had throughout my life
Hmm.
while I'm I'm still trying to survive in the entertainment industry, but whatever other jobs I've had to just make ends meet, it's like I've been looked at in those instances. I know a lot of times because I've had it said to my face where I'm either difficult to work with,
Hmm.
or I talk too much, or I'm constantly trying to change the way things are done.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, respectfully, yes.
Well, and I
That
think
is,
that that's
and
that's the
sometimes not respectfully.
yeah,
So
that's the sacrifice of an artist. That's a sacrifice of someone that feels deeply about things, you know, being the person that not everyone is gonna accept it, and they're not your people then, but you are that person that has the ability to elevate so many other voices that do align with it and that do respect the work that you're doing. It can be very difficult for people to accept the negativity from the people that aren't for you anyway. But that's what I'm trying to do constantly through this podcast and through writing more, and not overthinking or over polishing things before I just hit the post button, let it be whatever it is, because this is honestly who I am. Take it or leave it, whether you like it or not, and it's very freeing. Still scary though.
yeah, it could be both. It
It
could
can
be
be
both.
both. But isn't that more of a well lived life? I mean, it feels like that to me. I feel like in 20 years, if I look back and haven't done the things that I'm doing right now, I'd look back and be a little disappointed in myself. I think that having the courage to face your fears and tap into what it's like to be you truthfully, authentically, is something that we can all start right now, and I think that our older selves are really going to appreciate it,
Yeah,
regardless of
get
how
on
difficult
board,
it might be in the
everybody.
moment or uncomfortable, you know? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So before we wrap it up, Jamie Hannigan, is there anything that you want to let the audience know that you're working on, or where they can find you, or
They can they can definitely find me currently behind the scenes, as they say.
yeah.
I do have a show tonight, but I've taken a break from producing. I'm still
Hmm.
performing, and I'm just doing a lot of behind the scenes work. I have a project that I'm working on right now that is that is going to be based for a couple different charitable organizations, which those of you that don't know, that's been something that's been really important to me from day one as well, is kind of like using your powers for good, right? So
Hmm.
if you're given a platform, if you're given an opportunity, I believe that you should be using it to help others who may need it. So my performing arts company has always been based on that principle. And so being a parent and my son's everyday life having some special needs and just being an overall awesome kid has, just been in the forefront of everything I'm doing. But he's really finding his groove, and I'm so proud of him. So the next thing I'm working on is I'm really diving back into that advocacy and activism for an organization that I believe in very strongly. So I'm looking forward to putting that out there within the next year.
Amazing. Well, I'll definitely be following along. And your company though is called Stage Stars.
Yeah, Stage Stars Productions. Yep.
Hmm.
So it'll be under that company, and everyone always asks where I got the name, and I laugh. So I guess my truth again comes forward. I just remember being like probably 7 or 8 years old and drawing plans for my performing arts studio and company, and I don't know. That's just always what it was called. So that's what it's called. Everybody thought there would be some like story about how I got the name, and I'm like, no. When I
Hey
was a
man,
kid, that's what I decided. So that's what it is.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-mm.
Consistency is key. Well, Jamie, thank you again for showing up with so much honesty and heart. I mean, I knew that you would. Conversations like this are exactly what Mental Notes is all about, like real talk between real people who have lived through some stuff and come out the other side more grounded, more aware, and more compassionate. So, to everyone listening, I hope this episode reminds you that your truth is worth honoring, even if it's messy and even if it's misunderstood, because in the end, living in alignment with who you really are is where the healing starts. So, yeah, thanks again for being here. And if this episode resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep going. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.